Welcome inside Sports Authority Field in Denver, Colorado, where the Patriots, in a shocker, Chris, I think it's safe to say, go down to defeat in the AFC Championship, their fifth straight appearance in the AFC title game. They lose to Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos by a score of 20-18. I don't know where to begin, but I think it's a good spot as any is the ineffectiveness of the Patriots offensive unit. A lot of people, Chris, are going to talk about the offensive line just not giving Tom Brady enough time to move the ball down the field consistently.
20 quarterback hits on the afternoon for the Denver defense. I think that tells you everything you need to know about this game. Tom Brady did not get enough time in the pocket. He did not get, they weren't running the ball with any sort of effectiveness coming into this game, and we thought that there would never be a shot that they were going to run the ball anyway against this Denver defense.
Right.
But what Brady needed is that 2-second snap to throw. More often than not, they were in his lap like that. DeMarcus Ware, Von Miller talked about it over the course of the week. The key is getting to Brady. We talked about it. We wrote about it. Denver was able to do it.
The other thing I think that's very important to note, and our colleague Ryan Hannibal noted this pretty much early on in the game, what the Patriots were able to do to the St. Louis Rams in Super Bowl 36, I thought the Broncos were able to do to the Patriots today, and that is disrupt timing at the line of scrimmage. I asked Tom Brady about it, and he said, look, Denver's just a great defense, and they can do a lot of different things. Yeah, they did that, but they did other things as well. I asked Rob Gronkowski the same question, and he said they were pretty much, especially when I was tight to the line of the formation, they were definitely physical with me, as good as any team has been all year.
Yeah, and the one thing that they were able to do is they were able to get pressure with a minimum of rushers. They didn't do a lot of blitzing, at least at first. You have to go back and double check and take another look at the film. But at first glance, they didn't do a lot of blitzing. They were able to get pressure with a minimum number of rushers. They were able to knock Brady off his spot, and that made the Patriots passing game an ineffective unit. They had moments, especially late in that fourth quarter, that last drive, where Brady was able to find Gronkowski on 2 fourth-down conversions, including a ridiculous 40-yarder down the seam, the touchdown pass to Gronkowski that got him to within 2, but ultimately it wasn't enough.
There was so much to talk about in this game, but just in the fourth quarter alone, I believe it was the Patriots had the ball 3 times in under 6 minutes, in the final 6 minutes, and they did get the eventual touchdown with under a minute to go, actually with 12 seconds to go, before failing on the 2-point conversion. But a lot of people, Chris, are going to talk about the fact, why didn't the Patriots go for the field goals twice perhaps, making this a field goal game at the end. Bill Belichick talked about it after the game. He said down and distance dictated what we did, and that meant 4th down and very, very short. The first time, with about 4 minutes to go, it was 4th and 1, and a lot of people just figured, and I did too, up in the press box, well, no, that they were actually going to quarterback sneak.
Yeah.
And Brady drops back and throws a fade to Julian Edelman, and it's Chris Harris who comes up and makes the tackle, the guy with the bad shoulder.
The one thing that's important to remember on that, and I tweeted actually when that happened, I don't know why you don't go for the sneak in that situation. A lot of people tweeted back, it's a long 4th and 1.
Yeah.
It was a 4th and plus, really, when you look at it. So I can kind of understand that, going back and seeing a replay. It's a little bit longer. But, yeah, I think your point is a very good one. When you look at some of the special teams choices they made today, combined with the fact that you saw the first Stephen Gostkowski missed extra point since 2006, it's kind of a cloud hanging over this team when it comes to special teams. They put so much emphasis on special teams over the course of the last dozen or so years, and we've seen now special teams breakdowns across the board, really, at key moments this year, including tonight.
Tom Brady was asked about that 4th and 1, and he said, yes, we definitely thought about the quarterback sneak, but then they showed a type of look at the defensive line that made Brady audible to the pass to Edelman that came up short. Your point about Stephen Gostkowski is a good one. I was in on the scrum around Stephen Gostkowski. Chris, I got to tell you, I've never seen a player with as much class and dignity take it like Stephen Gostkowski did. He got dressed for about 5 minutes with a mass of reporters around him. He knew what was coming. He knew that extra point miss when it was in the first quarter and it could have made it 7-7. Really changed the tenor of the game going forward in terms of the score. And he said, quote, it was a nightmare scenario. I accept all the blame that's coming to me.
Yeah, he said he took it on his shoulders. 100% his fault. It was the quote that I remember hearing. And then you go to other guys in the locker room and they say, no, look, this is not on Stephen's shoulders. This is all 53 guys. Look, Gostkowski is an all-pro. He missed the kick today, and that's going to go on his resume. But at the same time, you have to remember, and this is something that Devin McCourty and Matthew Slater said, you look at this game, they're not here in a lot of ways without Stephen Gostkowski. Made a number of big kicks over the course of the year, including the one against the Giants, including the one here to force overtime. He's going to miss some from time to time. He just chose the worst day possible to miss one.
It really does have kind of the feeling of Gary Anderson back when the Minnesota Vikings had a chance to beat the Atlanta Falcons and lost in overtime. It's that kind of feel. It wasn't an overtime game. Certainly Anderson's miss was toward the end of the game. Gostkowski's was an extra point in the first quarter. But let's go to the offensive line, Chris. The Patriots, I think, are going to have to make some big-time changes along that line going into the offseason.
Well, I think that you start with the fact that you were down your left tackle. You know, ostensibly, at least in theory, your best and most important offensive lineman in Nate Solder. So you had to flip Vollmer, who's pretty good. You had to flip him from right to left, and then you lose something at the right tackle position, whether it was Marcus Cannon, whether it was Cameron Fleming. Whoever was over there was completely ineffective for large portions of the day. Brian Stork, by his own admission, apparently in the locker room, said he had a bad day. The interior of the offensive line, whoever was at guard, they broke down as well. You have to remember, let's pump the brakes just a little bit. This is one of the best defensive fronts in the league. Yep. And at the same time, if you want to be able to compete consistently at a high level, you're going to need to get quality offensive line play. The Patriots most certainly did not get that this afternoon.
In terms of other changes on this roster, because this is it, Chris. I mean, we're standing here pretty much in shock at Sports Authority Field after the Patriots lost a game that I think everybody thought they were going to win and march on to San Francisco. Other changes on this roster you see forthcoming?
I think you're going to need to get some sort of clarity at the running back position. Whether, and specifically the big between the tackles job, you know, I don't know if LeGarrette Blount comes back. You'd like to think that Deion Lewis is going to be healthy enough to start 2016. So there's going to be some turnover at that position. I don't think that Steven Jackson is going to be back. But you also want to build depth. You want to build depth at the linebacker position. You know, you have two really good young linebackers in Jamie Collins and Dante Hightower. You want to be able to build some depth there. You want to be able to build some depth at the cornerback position because, again, you like your first two guys, Logan Ryan and Malcolm Butler. You want to be able to get a third and a fourth corner there to slow down some of these high-octane passing games. I'm not saying that the Patriots are going to undergo wholesale roster changes, right, but a number of guys in that locker room said, look, this is the end of the line for this team, this 53-man group. When they return in the spring for the spring workout, it's going to look a lot different than it does now.
They were playing Glory Days just before we started recording this. And indeed, it is Glory Days for Peyton Manning. He is headed back to the Super Bowl for a fourth time and a second time with the Denver Broncos. He was 1-1 with the Colts. He lost that horrific game against the Seattle Seahawks 2 years ago in Super Bowl 48 at MetLife Stadium. Now it's Peyton Manning who gets to go back to the Super Bowl 50 in Santa Clara, February 7th, by virtue of a 20-18 win over Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. Chris, it's been a wonderful season. I really do appreciate you taking the time out after every game to give us your thoughts and reflections.
I really appreciate it, too. It's been a fun year. And obviously, I think for a lot of Patriots fans, it hurts right now, and I can understand that. But at the same time, you take a week, you take a couple of weeks. A lot of guys in the locker room said, you know, you're going to be able to look back on this season with a lot of pride because this team went through a lot. I think when you consider the amount of injuries that they had, when you consider the mental stress that this team went through, something that Matthews later talked about in the locker room, he said, look, we know a lot of people out there really don't like us, and that kind of starts to wear on you just a little bit. But I do. I think the season was great. I think it was a lot of fun. Ultimately, this team fell short of their, you know, the destination that they wanted, but there are a lot of good memories left along the way.
All right, again, the final in the AFC Championship, the Broncos 20 and the New England Patriots 18. For Christopher Price, I'm Mike Petraglia inside Sports Authority Field in Denver, WEEI.com.